Hello, beautiful ladies, and welcome to today's video, where we're going to be talking about why opera is still relevant in 2020. So I know that opera is really something that I think most people think is out of their realm and just isn't relevant to them in today's day and age. Most people haven't listened to classical music at all, so why would opera be relevant to them? And I know that it's so different that so many people think it's kind of silly sounding, and they pretty much only associate it with Bugs Bunny and that kind of thing. Well, I'm here to tell you why you should definitely give opera a chance, even in 2020. I want to preface everything I'm about to say with one thing, and that is that opera was never meant to simply be listened to. People listen to opera on the radio and they think that that's really all opera is, but opera was always meant to be performed on the stage. So seeing it is so much more important than just listening to it. There's a whole other aspect of opera than just the music. There's plot, there's staging, there's costumes, and if you're not actually giving yourself the chance to experience opera in its entirety, then you're not really giving yourself the opportunity to love opera. Listening to opera is great, but if you have the opportunity to rent a performance or see Met in HD or go to a performance in person, that's what you should be doing because that's always how opera was meant to be enjoyed. So reason number one that opera is still relevant today is that opera has the most glorious music. I know it's really hard to get used to if you're someone who's never listened to opera before at all, but let me give you a little trick for how you may be able to kind of ease your way into it. Pavarotti is one of the greatest opera singers of all time, and if you listen to his rendition of Nessun Dorma, I'm pretty sure you'll understand why opera is so beautiful. But before you just go straight in and listen to it, first, look up the lyrics and see the translation, look up the context for why it's being sung, and then listen to it. And after listening to it with the lyrics in front of you translated, try just listening to it with your eyes closed. This is a trick my dad did on my mom when they were young, and I think it's a really smart one because the music itself has so much meaning, but if you don't give it a chance to actually tell you what's happening in the story, it may not give you the same amount of meaning as you would expect. So going through those steps will really make all the difference. But there are a few reasons that opera is so intense. So the first is that operatic singing is done without a microphone. And actually, singing through a microphone can be difficult to do as an opera singer because you are used to creating so much sound and using something called formants, which are certain registers and things like that to help your voice carry in large halls. So we actually sing in these giant houses over an orchestra with no amplification. And getting an opportunity to just hear a voice without any kind of electronic barrier between you, meaning you're hearing them through a speaker or whatever it is a really raw experience, and opera gives you that opportunity. As well, opera is done with a full orchestra. Now, full orchestra means something different for every composer because a composer like Mozart had a much smaller orchestra as compared to Wagner. Wagner's was enormous, but in any case, you're getting to hear a full orchestra with a singer, and that is just glorious. Getting to experience opera is really fascinating as well because the reason that opera takes a little bit longer, I've always thought, is that it gives you time to experience an emotional turn of events at the same time that the character is, because it's not happening super quickly and you just have to kind of follow along as the character changes. Rather, you're in the character's head with them a lot of the time. And that is so cool. So you're getting to see them go through an emotional shift and hear them going through that emotional shift. You get to experience it too. So going to the opera is an incredible experience just for the musical aspect alone. Getting used to the way that opera singers sing might take you a couple of times, but really what you have to remember is that the way that we sing allows us to be heard without any microphones. So that's why we sound the way that we do. Also, when you hear the kind of acrobatic feats of the voice and also just the beautiful length of notes that we sing, that kind of stuff can end up being really impressive. So if you sort of look at opera at the beginning when you're just getting used to it, if you sort of look at opera like an Olympic feat, and then you can kind of develop your love for the singing in and of itself, that might be the way to do it because opera kind of is a feat if you think about it. We're singing for a very long time without any microphones and over this enormous orchestra. So getting to hear that Think of it as an Olympic competition, maybe the first couple of times, and then you'll end up being able to appreciate it on its own. The second reason that opera is still relevant in 2020 is the stories. Now, of course, there are some stories that are outdated, that don't really work, that may not take some great stances in our political climate, but a vast majority of opera stories are actually really, really relevant. And you can know that because a bunch of musicals are actually based on the same stories that operas are written about. So you know it's not just something crazy and out of left field. But most of the stories in opera really revolve around human interactions and emotions and things that we go through today that they went through 300 years ago. Love triangles, wanting to marry someone and your parents not approving, loving someone who may not be right for you, Shakespeare stories. I mean, everything across the gamut has been covered by opera. If there is a story that you love, it may have already been made into an opera. And there are also fairy tales. There are things that are appropriate for children. There are things that are appropriate for adults. There are so many different options of stories, and I'm sure you can find one that will appeal to you. And they all have this dramatic passion that you know people are already longing for if you think about soap operas or any drama that you see on stage or in movies. And there's just so much there that you will be able to dig through as a viewer. Number 3 is the experience. Going to the opera is so cool. You get to dress up if you want to. You get to see a lot of other people dressed up. You get to see live theater, and the sets and the clothing are usually so beautiful to look at. It's an experience that you won't get anywhere else. It's so, in a way, elevated, but it's really welcome to anybody. So I don't mean it in the way that only people who are fancier can go, but more in the sense of you get this experience that's just so unique. And it's so worth doing. So I mean, one of the things that I think is great about the opera is that we have intermissions. So the first half, you get to sit and just watch, and then you have a break. And during that break, this is a great time to go on a date. You experience the first half, and then during the intermission, you and your partner can just go out and talk about it. Then you sit through the second half, and then afterwards you get a drink. I mean, it's the perfect evening. Plus, you have an excuse to put on a gown. Who doesn't want that? And just to answer any questions about why opera and not musical theater and why opera and not a play. First of all, opera is an experience that is entirely different from any other. So it wouldn't replace either one. Musical theater is really fun and I love it. It's just much more modern, and I don't think that it explores emotions in the same way. It does explore emotions, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit more surface level sometimes depending on the show. And with opera, you have a sung through performance where people are literally throwing their voice on the stage. It's just a different experience. Plus, like I said, that raw emotional connection when somebody doesn't have a microphone on, you'll only get in an opera house. Plus, in musical theater, you're not getting a full orchestra, and you do definitely get that in an opera. And the stories are just very different. The stories in opera have really heightened emotions, whereas in musical theater, I think it's more similar to what we experience in our day-to-day lives. The reason that opera has so much more of a heightened, dramatic, emotional experience is because seeing someone else experience the height of their emotions on stage, I think breaks the barrier between you and the performer and allows you to go through your own experience as well while they're going through theirs. It reminds you of your own, because watching someone else go through it and to that level of really feeling how they're feeling, it kind of breaks down that wall for you. Now, why is opera different than a play? There's something so special about having music and the story tied together. Music, I think, amplifies everything that happens in a play. I love straight theater, so that is not to put straight theater down at all. I just think it's worth doing all three. Plays have a place, musicals have a place, and opera has a place, and you should be able to enjoy all of them, but don't replace any of them with the other. Have you ever been to an opera? If you have, what was one that you absolutely loved? And if you've listened to an opera but not seen one, would you agree that it wasn't necessarily the best experience and that you would like to go see one instead? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Please subscribe to my channel and blog if you haven't already. Head over to my Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook and follow me there. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!